My name is Brandon Bryant. I'm a 27-year-old veteran. I was born here, born in Missoula. I was very much an introvert growing up. Single mother, 2 sisters, crap load of female cousins. So I was pretty much alone all the time. And I grew up with books and comic books and heroes and villains. I kind of grew up optimistic, idealistic. I grew up in a Christian home. I wasn't necessarily too patriotic. I was more of the fact of good guys versus bad guys, making decisions and doing the right thing. I decided to get into the Air Force because I was racking up college debt and I didn't know what else to do. So when I was talking to the Air Force recruiter, he's like, you know those guys that sit in the operations center for James Bond and gather the intelligence he needs to do his mission? And I was like, yeah, I know those guys, like Q and all them. And he's like, yeah, you'll be one of those guys. And I was like, it's pretty badass. Getting into the drone program was weird. The introduction is like, this is what we do. We kill people and break things. That is what our job is. I worried about it, you know, can I do this? Can I actually kill someone? Could I actually pull the trigger? I mean, I'm not actually pulling the trigger, I'm guiding the missile in, but it's essentially the same thing. I don't see a difference. We typically flew in Iraq between 8,000 and 12,000 feet. And then in Afghanistan, we flew between 18 and 25,000 feet. And depending on atmospherics, if it was a completely clear day, you would definitely get a good picture. And depending on how close you were, you could probably read the license plate on someone's car. We can see something as simple as people playing a soccer game. We can see individual players, and we can even see the ball.
It would have been a 7 or 8 hour trip for 16-year-old Tariq through treacherous terrain, through potential Taliban hotspots, and of course under drone surveillance.
It was the first time that the international media, the drone victims, the tribal elders, and the general public came together. It was held in a 5-star hotel. The tribal elders spoke in terms of political implications, how they felt, and the drone victims spoke about personal stories.
This is a part of the drone missile that was used to kill that child.
It was a gathering to get the voice of the victims of drone attacks out to the general public as well as the rest of the world.
And that was the main goal. We were going to use the media to try and establish who had been killed and also why, where and how.
Well, because of the inaccessibility of Waziristan, it's very, very hard to compile any kind of credible evidence or evidence that other people will see as credible. That was part of the reason we organised this conference in Islamabad.
We called it a jirga.
A jirga is a traditional tribal gathering.
That's what people in that area use to settle their disputes.
At one stage I came across a young boy, Tariq Aziz. When I was talking to Tariq, one of the first things that he did was he handed me his cousin's student ID card. And as I looked at it, I looked back at Tariq and I noticed that he was crying. He started to tell me the story of his cousin who had been killed from a drone strike. He'd come to the Jirga primarily to inform us a little bit more about what had happened to his cousin, to people in his local village, and find out how to stop the killing. And we sat together all day, we ate together at lunchtime, we laughed together, we became friends. Tariq was extremely intelligent and funny to be around. He had a nice sense of humour. He was fascinated by photography and intrigued by Western music, mentioning artists, and one that sprang to mind was Lady Gaga. He started to talk about drone strikes in his village, how he was unable to sleep at night. He was scared, he was worried about his family, his friends. Tariq was traumatized.
He wanted to talk about how he was affected by drone attacks and basically to give the message that the people of Waziristan want justice against the killings of innocent civilians under drone attacks that are operated by the US.
और जिसने तकरीबन उस दिन मैंने सब चीजें कैमरा को साथ रखा दर्दनाक कहानी इन बच्चों की दूसरा इनका भाई था ये भी वो समझ रहे थे ये हमारा दूसरा भाई है ये भी ड्रोन में जान बहाल हो चुका है ये इनको उस वक्त कुछ मालूम नहीं हो रहा था कि मेरी माँ और मेरा बाप जो भी इनके टुकड़े यहाँ पर पड़े हैं.
And the people who were gathered there adopted a resolution condemning the strikes. The outcome of the Jirga was a big success because it allowed people to come together, listen to stories, and come to a common resolution. Then we went together to a rally, and Tariq Aziz traveled there with us.
We travelled towards the rally, and Tariq sat next to me. He seemed relaxed. He was laughing with his friends. Tariq and everybody else got out, and they went to the rally.
Thousands of Pakistanis came to support a giant rally on Sunday.
The protest against the United States drone attacks in Pakistan.
जो drones हैं, ये पाकिस्तान के अवाम की human rights की खिलाफवर्जी.
People from all over the country, irrespective of their ages and backgrounds, came together to the rally.
हम अमेरिका को पैगाम देना चाहते हैं कि आप जितने ड्रोन अटैक्स करेंगे, उतने ही लोग आपसे नफरत करेंगे.
After that, Tariq Aziz and the other attendees returned to their homes.
دبل میشه من در جوت میشه که پارلیمنت شه پاور واقع جوت جلوس غاوه ان شاء الله دې میشه خبره ورسي.
شدای میشه غسر وکړه سیټینګ مو وکړ ټول سیټینګ چې فوټبال میچ مو دا حساب وتا
Kerkala میشه بتاوی چه داره تا که لارجین فوتبال ولا او د سر چکه
هم برکشیتا چلوړه میشه تپی کلی تا ګاډ شي پلولیتا چې مشکل لګول لکه ما هغه ته ویل د وریر غور سره عبدالعزیز طارق عزیز وریر وای مشتره
یو سره غشوله ختم شو او یو سویه وید درسه دوا سره
چې ګاډي نه مو سره راوبسله مو سره خپل چې کوم ګاډی و دغه ګاډي ته مو سره اخچه کړل دی
د طریق بدن خو چې ما ولیده لکه ډېر تشته ورته غشول پریشان شول خمجان شول بېرته لکه د ده باید د دې لکه مونږ خو په علاقې کې لکه پښتو ډېر غا دی لکه مونږ ته و چې بس ته سیرته شه
لکه اولاد ته چې ورور شي د اول سر څه لکه ډېر سره ګابراو شي بېژنه شو ورغځه کېده
Two days later, I got a call. You know, I heard about Tariq a few days later after I'd gone back to England.
I got an email.
I was at work when we found out.
We got an email and a telephone call.
4 days after the Jirga, I received an email from Shahzad. The email simply said Tariq as the heading, and I opened it instantly. To my shock, I found out that Tariq had been murdered by a drone strike.
And that was a shock. I was like, how is it possible? Where was he? What was he doing? And it's like completely unbelievable.
My initial thoughts were, this wasn't happening, this was just a dream.
We didn't think that Tariq, the 16-year-old kid who wanted to talk about football, would be killed in a drone attack the same week that we'd met him.
تاسو کوم وکه چې نه یا خدا پاک دا څو وشول و دا سره باندې کېږي و دا اوس ولکه دی چې نشته که نه هغه خواشیغه نشته بلکل نه مجلسونه نه صحبتونه هغه مخکې چې دا خو هغه و لکه فټبالونه موږ خپل پکې پرېښودل
بیا چې که یوه کېرته مغه کړل هغه نه بعد زه تلوړل مې دلته بکسنګ وروړه خو ډېر څه حالات و
نو احساس خو بس افسوس کړل دي لکه ډېر زیات افسوس مې وکړ چې یو معصوم بېګناه کس په ډرون باندې
لکه طارق به براشه خو چې ورته بیا هغه چې لکه ایو غادو ورته په پښتو کې که نه چې په کفن کې د تصویر سره کېږدم داسې نه چې په جنت کې رانه شي.
Why did it happen? Why was Tariq killed?
If the U.S. had any information that Tariq Aziz was part of a criminal organization, was planning to carry out attacks on the United States, then our federal law enforcement agents should have been working with the authorities of Pakistan to arrest him.
And one really has to ask the question why the government was not able to arrest or even question him. This is Islamabad we're talking about. It's the capital of the country.
The population is over 1 million people. Jirga was a real public event.
It was at a big hotel. It was advertised widely. It was an open event.
Tariq Aziz was plainly visible to hundreds and hundreds of people. We talked with reporters. Everything about him that the authorities could have wanted to know about his location and about his recent activities were known to the United States.
So it would have been extremely easy for them to approach him, sit down and talk to him, or for that matter, put him in jail. But instead the CIA chose to go and kill him without giving him the opportunity to give his side of whatever it is that they thought that he had done. There is no evidence there whatsoever. And they've given him no lawyers, there's no judge, and there's no jury.
Our preference is always to capture if we can, because we can gather intelligence. But a lot of the terrorist networks that target the United States, the most dangerous ones, operate in very remote regions, and it's very difficult to capture them.
But what we can discern from the pattern of strikes is that essentially Pakistan's been declared a no-capture zone, that automatically capture is not considered feasible.
If you just look at the numbers, there have been dramatically more people killed in recent years than have been captured.
They've killed maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people in targeted killings, and they've captured a handful.
There are no CIA agents in Waziristan, so they rely on local people.
And this is where the fundamental wrong is, because these people are working for you for money.
And that reliance is utterly misplaced. And what you see in Tariq's case, and it just pains me to say this, that you know without any real room for dispute that there was someone in that room when we were having our jirga who was an informant for the U.S. intelligence services, and that person picked out Tariq. I can tell you as a matter of fact that Tariq was not an extremist. And the way you know what intelligence they relied on to kill someone is what they release immediately after the killing. And in that case, they said 4 militants were killed. And of course, we know that 2 kids were killed. That's how it happened.
I asked the CIA about the strike, and their response was, on that day, no child was killed. In fact, the adult males were supporting al-Qaeda's facilitation network. So despite all of these technological assets and human assets, we're not there. We don't know. And I think there is a lot of room for error.
Killing Tariq was clearly breaking the law. In fact, it was further than that. It was just murder.
Tariq Aziz was one of almost 300 children killed. Why are these children being killed?
This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists.
The killing of Tariq Aziz has to call into question the credibility of the government's kill list methodology.
The vast majority of the strikes here are against people whose identities the government doesn't know.
We do not know where targeted killings are authorized to be used. We do not know the specific identities of people who have been killed.
The Constitution empowers the president to protect the nation from any imminent threat of attack.
So how can Tariq Aziz, a 16-year-old boy, possibly meet that definition of imminent threat?
The Justice Department has defined an imminent threat based not on whether the threat is specific and immediate, which is what imminent means.
So that people pose imminent threats regardless of whether they are actually engaged in any ongoing immediate attack against the United States.
We have a responsibility to defend this country, and that's what we're doing.
Killing Tariq hasn't made us any safer. It's taken away a young boy's life. It's destroyed a family and a community.
Under the interpretations we've heard from the administration and members of Congress, drone strikes could go on indefinitely against enemies that keep morphing into new enemies. But killing should be the exception, not the rule.
Tariq Aziz should never have died. The U.S. should not have been using military force to attack innocent civilians, let alone children.
I would question a policy that says it is legitimate and even sensible to assassinate a 16-year-old boy.
He was trying to be part of the constructive way forward.
Tariq wanted to do something to help. I think he felt that he had more to give, more to talk about, and more to understand. And the impact of Tariq's murder on my life has been huge. Made me reflect deeply and made me question a lot of things. He has now become a symbolic figure in innocent children that have been killed by drone strikes.
He was just a kid.
There's 2 guys in front, 1 guy in the rear. And they're walking up this path, and 2 guys in front are discussing. They're like, you can see them having an apt conversation. They've got something slung over their shoulders, which look to be weapons. The mountainous portions of Afghanistan are not so unsimilar from the mountainous regions of Montana. And seeing people with guns walking around the mountains of Afghanistan was like, well, people are walking with guns in the mountains of Montana. But as soon as we get eyes on them, it's like immediately confirm door weapons, confirm your cleared target. So place the target at their feet and we get missiles away. Ends up getting all 3 of them. But the guy in the back, it ends up cutting his leg off above the knee and severing his femoral artery. And he's rolling around. He's holding it, and he's just like rolling around. But you can see like where his leg is missing, and the blood is spurting out and landing on the ground, and it's cooling. It's hot. It's a hot pool of blood, and it's cooling. And we keep eyes on and watch the guy become the same color as the ground that he bled out on. I could almost see his facial expression. It was, I could almost see his mouth open and crying out. Maybe he cursed us, or maybe he asked Allah for forgiveness for us. Who knows what his last thoughts were, but it wasn't pretty, whatever it was. It was shock and trauma, and his ears were probably ringing, and he was bleeding out, and he was in agony. I didn't know how to react. No one teaches you how to react. They teach you how to do it. There's no, they ignore the reaction part. I wished I never contributed further to that.
Before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured. The highest standard we can set.
The vast majority of those killed in drone strikes, over 98%, have not been high-value targets.
The adoption of signature strikes make indiscriminate killing, a policy.
What they end up with is what I described earlier, the signature strike.
They moved back to a greater reliance on these signature strikes.
A signature strike is a drone strike that isn't based on the identity of the target.
I obtained classified U.S. intelligence reports on drone strikes. What the documents reveal are the way that signature strikes are put together. And these are strikes against people who fit the signature of what the U.S. government says is a terrorist.
Maybe they are walking in and out of the compound with guns. Maybe they're getting in trucks and they're moving to the Afghan border.
And drone operators seated thousands of miles away from the area affected are looking at video feeds, assessing those video feeds, and based on that, making decisions about whether or not someone who's walking through the community is a suspected terrorist.
You conclude on the basis of the behavior that they are a terrorist, and you kill them.
In a number of cases that I looked at, the CIA wasn't sure who they were hitting.
The agency became convinced that it had gotten so good at watching from above that it could distinguish different groups. It could distinguish whether a terrorist leader was at a certain location.
But there is room for a lot of misunderstanding when you're doing something like conducting signature strikes.
A drone strike is only as good as the intelligence that is behind the actual strike.
Anyone who's worked in intelligence knows that intelligence doesn't, quote-unquote, prove anything. It's not evidence.
So drones hit what they aim to hit. But if they're aimed at the wrong people, then civilians are killed.
Former U.S. Ambassador Cameron Munter had said that one man's combatant was another man's chump who went to a meeting.
When Leon Panetta was director of the CIA, somebody memorably said, if Leon sees a few guys doing jumping jacks on the ground, he thinks that's a terrorist training camp.
Classified documents suggest U.S. officials don't always know exactly how many or who they're killing.
They don't always have precise ID.
The apparent targeting of people whose identity is not known.
They may not be as precise as many U.S. officials claim.
As soon as those signature strikes begin, we start to see another steep escalation in civilian casualties. So that's what happens when signature strikes go wrong. Large numbers of people die because they don't know who's been killed in most of the drone strikes.
I didn't feel like I was a part of anything good or wholesome or healthy or contributing to the greater good. I felt like I was destroying myself.
Shield at Caltech service stations and authorized distributors. Haviland.
On March 17, 2011, a jirga was held in Darakel to resolve a dispute over a chromite mine.
If there is a feud getting out of hand, jirga will convene and everyone has a chance to speak. It really is a democracy, and that is a mechanism to make sure that there is stability in society.
دغه کې په 40 نه پوسه کسان سره ناست وي په دروازه ناست وي یو ځای کوي بل ځای کوي او په میژ باندې دا خبره کړل چې د پرمیټ او د لارګي په ځکه نو سپینګش د سګرد.
They held the jirga in an open space in a bus depot in broad daylight. Tribal elders informed the Pakistani military.
Brigadier Dogard was in command of the brigade on the border, so he is a key commander. The brigadier knew about the jirga 10 days in advance. His own army camp was 10 kilometers from the site of the jirga.
So this was an open public event that pretty much everyone in the community and surrounding area knew about. So the jirga begins in the morning at about 10 o'clock, and after about 20 minutes or so,
په ماس کې په پکام یو لاس باجې باندې په 17/3/2011 کې په میژ باندې څلور مزایل وشتل شو دوه مزایل په میژ باندې وشتل شو دوه په بل ځای باندې وشتل شو.
There's smoke and debris and chaos.
It was huge explosions. So people in the shop, in the nearby areas, they rushed to the place.
پزې کې مرشي کې مړونه حمله په میش باندې وشو پزې کې موږ د داسې منظر و چې بالکل په میش باندې جهنم جوړ شو. هیڅ معلومات نشته داسې نشه مې چې دا څه مې که واس راوړي په میش باندې تکا کړه شو.
15 منټ په سیټ باندې مته اطلاع ورسېده چې هغه جرګه باندې ډرون حمله وشوه. بیا دا هغه وخت کې هغه ځای ته ورغله چې هغه کې زخمیان او د بنی ادم ټوکړې ټوکړې دغه الته موجوده وی چې څو ورسېده.
چا تنینا نیم پریوی چا لسینا کاټ وی چا سرینا کاټ وی چا فشه کاټ وی چا بالکل وجود هیڅ پته نه لګیدله خاتمي زری زری هیڅ
جوړو بس هر چا جوړو لار څخه خپاوي جوړو وسیره نورې وی دا بیا ویل دا ډرون حمله په میش باندې شي اوس د اسمونه په میش باندې مزایل شي څه پته د ډرون نه لګي او خالي مزایل شي میش باندې ولای
کلام ډیر ورسېدلې د تخله وسیمه ته پښتنه وکړه چې څرا کاسون وی چې وسوب یا نشي شمیر نشي ټوکړه ټوکړه دي خلک غشه غشه دي خانه او صرف چې داسه مو وکتل او صرف ټوکړه وی کپړه کمیسینه پکې سوي وی
پلور کیندا مترځه کیندا چې کله ورول د خپل پلور مول دل چرته و چې دا غدا بیا په زم لګدا بیا په کټال می دا سرمنه چې کیما واچ ګوتم په لگاواله سرمنه بالکل ورشته ډارېګا.
ټول مشران پکې شهیدان شوي دي. نو زه ډېر خفه شوم ځکه چې زمونږ پلار چې و نو هغه زمونږ د قبیلې مشر و زمونږ د آمدن ذریعه وه ټول زمونږ ډیپنډ چې و نو زمونږ په پلار باندې و.
دای مو لکه ګوښه مو وکتل صرف او دا چې مو وکتل دای بالکل خاتم او هیڅ پیژنګالي نشوله مخکې خارو په ټول وجود لوس پرې ارته شی خاتمي دا سوي وي بالکل.
افشا مې خوږېږي یا صحیح نه ده خو دا ډیکي سره لګي زخم کو تا دوه ورځې بیا پرېشن کو او هغه ژنه ډېر تکلیف پېته په دماغ کې مې پارخونه راځي.
The loss of 40 leaders on a single day is devastating for that community. It's devastating in terms of leadership. It's devastating in terms of the moral compass. And it's devastating in economic terms as well.
نه چونکې دا زموږ دپاره یو ډېر نقصان و هغه به په جرګې کې کېناستو د خلکو مسلې به یې حل کولې د خلکو د ترقۍ او د خوشحالۍ دپاره یې به کارونه کول ځکه چې هغه د خپلې علاقې یو الکټ کونسلر و.
This drone strike is coming at the end of a series of drone strikes. It's feeding into the sense of no one is safe, nowhere is safe, nothing is safe. Even a jirga, the most cherished, the most treasured institution of the tribal areas. So we cannot even sit down and resolve an issue. That is not safe anymore.
میش په وجه باندې جلګا نشي کړلای سره په وجه دا ډېر نستای ویل وړای میش نشي سره کړلای ځکه چې میش 24 غنټه ډرون همیشه ګرځي میش تاسو.
That impact has really affected the population and their basic sense of security and basic sense of living in that area.
او باقي د میش ژوندین خو از د تبعی سره مخ ته لکه د میش چې سمره ادارې دي او ختم شولې.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today.
3 months after 42 civilians died, John Brennan stood up and said,
nearly for the past year, there hasn't been a single collateral death because of the exceptional proficiency, precision of the capabilities that we've been able to develop.
High-level authorities tell the American public that there have been no civilian casualties.
They were presumably using this notion that any male of a certain age, roughly between 14 and 60, who is killed is automatically counted as a combatant.
The Vietnam body count as a metric was flawed. It did not really give you a measure of how successful you were being. In fact, it led you astray in assessing that. And the drone strikes are the same way. They're the wrong metric. Tell me how we're winning if every time we kill one, we create 10.
The strikes at Batakel caused a significant negative reaction by Pakistani authorities and by the Pakistani people.
Anti-American sentiment in Pakistan reached greater heights.
That very large drone strike really upended U.S.-Pakistani relations.
I was a military guy for 25 years. I've done 7 wars. I'm not about being nice to the enemy. But the blowback and the aspect of political destabilization, those things ultimately do make us less safe.
The growing public outcry appears to have at least compelled the country's top political and military leadership to publicly denounce U.S. drone attacks.
Violence is not the only solution. You have a recourse available. You can go to Pakistani courts to take up this matter legally.
د دنیا په کوم ملک چې ته ګرځې نو هلته د عدالت دپاره یوه اداره یو جوډیشري سیسټم موجود وي نو د جوډیشري سیسټم کار هم دی چې هغې ته انصاف میلاو شي.
مش ترى دعوز وشاتكو مش بالتعليم خالكي بالزبانة ومش ترى هتسا
شهزاد اکبر سره زما رابطه وشوه هلته د ده کسان و هغه ماته راغلي وو هغې مونږ ته ویلي وو چې تاسو به دا کیس په عدالت کې اوچتوئ چې تاسو ته انصاف میلاو شي.
Relatives of the victims have decided to fight a legal battle against the CIA for killing innocent civilians.
When we started with serving legal notices and starting the drone litigation, my critics, they were saying, how can you do drone litigation? Oh, there's no jurisdiction in tribal areas. There were so many issues and there were so many objections. It's a common joke in Pakistan that grandfather starts a litigation and then the grandson actually gets to hear the verdict in that case. But I decided to file the Peshawar High Court litigation because the 17th March 2011 strike was a typical example of signature strikes and what's wrong with them. But during the process, the most interesting thing was that in the last 5 years, more than 1,400 civilian Pakistanis have been killed in drone strikes.
A Pakistani court has declared U.S. drone attacks in the country a war crime.
In a landmark judgment, the High Court described the attacks as a blatant violation of Pakistan's sovereignty.
The court ruled that the practice was illegal.
A court in Pakistan has ruled U.S. drone strikes on Pakistani territory are illegal and should be stopped.
they declared that in drone strikes, CIA officials are committing the offense of murder. It's not a demand of Pakistan anymore that drone strikes should stop. It's their legal obligation that drones need to stop. We have proved that if you really want to do something and if you really want to get justice for people who have been denied justice, you can achieve that.
The human rights organization Reprieve has filed a lawsuit against the UK for its role in drone strikes.
Barack Obama is facing demands in court to reveal more about the U.S. drone program.
The ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of families of 3 Americans killed in drone strikes.
Victims accused John A. Rizzo of conspiracy to wage a war of aggression, to commit murder and crimes against humanity.
Can you take the drones out of the hands of the CIA?
Ma'am, let me finish.
People on the ground are saying, where is the accountability for this? It's unleashed a global citizen movement.
We don't feel that our government should be killing people without trial, without conviction.
It's a very, very wicked thing to do.
This demonstration is for Obama, for him to transform the current policies of the United States.
Thousands gathered on Monday to condemn the recent U.S. drone attack.
Protesters in Atlanta say drones are dangerous and they want them banned.
Drone strikes are acts of terrorism.
In San Diego, there are regular protests outside General Atomics.
Killer drones have no shame. War is not a video game.
We need to stop these killer drones from leading us into a world of chaos and lawlessness.
You lawmakers, you senators, enough is enough.
I don't think the United States has the authority to be going around the world deciding who to assassinate.
Coming to work, told that they found a high-profile dude hanging out. We're told that they have intel that this guy is there and they're gonna strike him. And so, like, if this guy's a high-ranking bad guy, like, why not? There was a lot of activity there early that day. Pretty much everyone's left. But the intel that the guy is still there. And so we fired. And then 6 seconds before missile impact, something runs around the building. When I brought that up, the screener who disseminated the video feed said that it was a dog. But I don't think that he ever mentioned a dog the entire evening of them monitoring. I mean, I was pretty much brand spanking new at this. I'd only been doing it a couple months. So who was I to question? I doubt myself at times, like, maybe I was seeing things, but ultimately I believe there was a child killed, and that burden is placed on me. Doing this, I had to really think about why was I here? Why am I doing this? I was pretty religious at the time, and I went and talked to the chaplain, and under the orders of my commander, actually, and I got nothing out of it. He was just basically like, it's God's plan. It's God's plan for people to die. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. I didn't feel like I was a part of anything good or wholesome or healthy or contributing to the greater good. I felt like I was destroying myself. I was taking who I pictured myself to be in my head and chopping it down and breaking it down, taking a sledgehammer to it. And it crumbled.
زما مو نوم دا رفیق الرحمن خپل محکمه تعلیم شه د پرایمری سکول ټیچر یم ماشومانو ته سبق وایم ما اوس لاس کوله کې کنه ما 10 سال سرویس پورا شو دا به هر د کوم بچو د مستقبل کوشش کوي مستقبل یې روښانه شي د باوجود همیشه کې مدد د امریکای د ډرون نه کنه لوس نشي دا مو بچی دو نبیلا نوم دا یو مو بلا بچی دو آسمان نوم دا زبیر رحمان مو بچای دا نو زه په خپل چې سکول نه لوړ شو کلی شه دا دې زکه دي پاشه دي دا غو مشي دي زناور دي ته پر خوارو
دوسری مقصد چې وا وخت لري ډیره سوکا وا لکه خال کې ډیره شا وخت کړه او 2:45 بجې د ورځې وې زه په خپل چې سکول چټي شپه میرانشاه ته لاړم ما د سکول غانه دی کنه زه د سامان انچارج د سکول کې کنه ګډې مې تړلې نه بنا بیا سره به چې په ګاډي شنوسیو شخواشي جامې کیدای ماشومان د پرانه نه مټای وخصې وکنه چای سلو چای نه چای مې در وخصې یو مو یو خړه پنه وکړلو چې پر ډرونه تا وسپلا کوڅه په کټا شي کمره نه مو چې کله ډرونه تا وټوله مې وسنه نه خړګار دینا چکلل تاسو راګ سره وغنجري
Momen dakdal biasa saya sedang awalnya, kali awalnya.
Mandagna. Kalau lekar lagi me wali dala.
Da basiriya tal soalnya mu bapsai bawa lagi tu.
Ni anak picture lagi pelanja.
Na mau apa tahu jadi bayamnya ke.
Bayam mesti apa tahu lega seorang adun mesti jadi ke hal ke bandai. Awal dua wali ke pinza last minute apa jadi hal perpan sebab perwali. لکه نره خلک د غاس به سره
دا وی چې دوام او چې نره خلک به ورشي په پابند ورولي
دوام او زمير شباب بیا را لرم چې زه پرې واتم پسې پرې واتم مو سیروګه چې وای مرشپل سیرمه او مرشپل چا ډېر زخمي وو او دا نره وړو بچونه وشال چې سکه مې رمشاته وړي دي سکه مې لیتا تک پېښور ته وړي دي
The attack was on October the 24th. I came from Islamabad and interviewed the family in Peshawar clinic. But in general, you know, the sense was of a family that had had a very traumatic experience, that were very upset.
دا مې کې مدو د بچونه ډاکټرونو تر وستلې وي دغه اکسرې دي دا کلیم رحمان دی مور یاره ده دا ورونه غټه ډیکه مت شو ده دا پرشن کړه دا دته د اسپنې رډینه ورچولې دي هغه زی ته چې زه ورغلل امور چاپل مې ازې ولیدل بیا چې مور چاپل مې ولید ما فورن دا تسلیم دا چې مور مې
مثال په شغاده بیا ما خو چې په خاورې کې دا خو نه پروتې ده کنه نور خلک راغلل بیا پټي کې مې غوښتل تقریبا 25 فټو ساوزور چې پاتې چې ملاو شو چې کله مې مور ولیدا ازي پرتا مور منډه کړل په مېره مالې خلک زه ورلونی ولا شي دا ډېر ځخ خراب و ډېر تخونه پکې زیات هغه په باکسا شي شو د ټوکړه ټوکړه وا افیا د یره مغرب طرف ته نوار کې لیدل شي مور خو مې دا سوا کنه چې هو مور خو چې یې چې د وګونه خزانه دو کنه او چې غاټه مسالې جوړې شي کنه سپریشنی جوړه شي مېر سره مشوره وکړه میرا ویل چې دوه مشرابي تو ته تسلی در کو اپریشنی د پیرا ور سره کم شي او اسمه چې مېر شهید کړه مېر مې مړه کړه کنه
Atik and Rafiq, whose mother had been killed in this attack, you know, obviously as anyone would be, they were angry and they were very upset.
و چې کله دا په مش په خاندان دا هاور په ډورا ټیکو شو مې نه پر شهید په بچون شهید مش تاسو مسکره کنه مش خپل شي د مش کې نو د تیم ترتیب ویلې کې څه چر درنه وروړو څه چر خپل بچون کې په نختر سي
You have people living in constant fear that they're not safe in their own homes or in their streets or in their locality. They live in fear that they would be attacked and they could die, or their children or their property or their land could be seriously affected.
जी खुदा चेदा चे जो जर्सी हो हमले शी दे तमका वो शी दे गाव शी गाना आगा इंजर्ड पर्सन वो नहीं गाना डेड पर्सन आगा बॉडी टोटल डिस्ट्रॉयड
एजे सरा बीमारों पेशेंट देर जित शवी दी जिम साइकाट्रिक पेशेंट दी कना अक्सर दिल अदरी में मेरे साइकाट्रिक डॉक्टर ने तो वशाई
खुदा जही एंजाइटी एंड डिप्रेशन लगा दी ओ मैन वजह लगा che आज दे सेफ जोन ना का यार शायद डिस्टर्ब
पहिले गोसाव बगेटा खबर डारे मैं तो माने मोना मा होता कुछ केटा से देता पे डारे
دا څه د چې تو مثال تسلی اعتماد وی چې مثال ته خپل غلط کار نه کوي کنه غلط خلک بغیر نه سه همیش دا 100% دا یقین وي ان شاء الله
دهشتګر همیش لقب دا غاښ نه همیش لیدلې دهشتګر او خلیر یو نه یې روډیو نه من دهشتګر دې مړ کړ دا دهشتګر دې
دهشتګر په شکل حالات دي مثال طالبان په حالات دي دا سه دي او دا سه دي او دا وړ بچو دي مسیح دي او زنا دا
Hundreds of civilians have died in US drone strikes. The evidence is pretty clear on that. Unfortunately, the US media doesn't seem to want to engage on that.
The news reports, all you have to go on is a reference to 2 militants were killed or 3 militants were killed. And there's not a lot of evidence as to who those militants were.
U.S. media outlets have been mindlessly reciting and regurgitating whatever statistic the government disseminates.
टारगेट ورته جوړ کو هغه مثال غلط بیان ورکو چې داسې دهشتګرد در باندې وشتل داسې مثال القاعده در باندې وشتل کنه لکه څنګه چې ټارګټ ورکو هغه مثال را بتا در طرف کو کنه او میر لکه مثال دا هغه کا کنه غلطی دو
जब मैं मीरान शाह पहुंचा तो मुझे वहां पर मकामी सहाफ़ियों ने इतला दी कि आपके पीछे चप्पल भी थे तो ये सारी चीज़ें इकट्ठी करके उनकी तस्वीरें निकाली और एक सबूत इकट्ठा करके मीडिया के सामने लाया। मैं रिपोर्टिंग करूंगा इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया के साथ, लेकिन ग्राउंड पर जाकर जो सूरत हाल होगा उसको दुनिया के सामने लाऊंगा, क्योंकि खबर आती थी कि इनमें दहशतगर्द मार दिए हमने, लेकिन बाद में पता चलता था कि इसमें बच्चे भी है, ख़वातीन भी है, बूढ़ी भी है। देखो हम आम लोग के साथ जब बात करते हैं तो वो कहते हैं कि ये तारीकी रात का तपड़ है।
ड्रोन वली दमरा दुश्मन टोल वजीरिस्तान ये दुश्मन दा मुताब गुनाह नाक नवली वजीरिस्तान अखपल पहला न वो दुश्मनी से अखपल दुश्मन करो तो का ड्रोन याक न को
बस सजात पजरावे में गुनाह खालक मरेजी पजरावे बचोन का तलकेजी पजरावे बचोन इंगिना बायेजी और देखो दागा ना मिसाल दा लगा तमीज वाला
هغه کسانی چې سلکله بدغه مش خپل قتل او چاته په دینه نه مفکوي.
From their point of view, this is not war. This is murder. And that's the way they look at it. It is recruiting terrorists all over the world. It's making young men and young women make the decision that the United States is their enemy and therefore worthy of their jihad.
دا زیوه نسیو د خپل وینې انتقام ومیرزنه او خپل زګه چې د میرزه پښتې کلچر دا هداي.
The U.S. has killed a large number of people, and yet at the same time, instead of al-Qaeda growing less in Yemen, we're seeing in fact the exact opposite, that the more people we kill, it seems the larger in fact that al-Qaeda is growing.
The suspect is arrested in the Times Square bombing attempt.
Faiz al-Shahzad, who was a Pakistani national who was engaged in the attempt to blow up Times Square, the motivation that he put forward for his attack was that he witnessed a series of drone strikes, and so he was mounting an attack on a US city in retaliation. The Faiz al-Shahzad attack on Times Square is one example, but there are other possibilities.
This video made by the FBI shows agents detonating a bomb that the government says was identical to the components that Shahzad had assembled.
Bomb investigators found propane tanks, powder, and an apparent timing device.
This Shahadi attack will be the first of the revenge operations against the Americans and their drone teams.
Another terror attack killing at least 78 people.
The deadliest attack ever on a Christian minority in Pakistan. The Taliban says the attack was in retaliation for U.S. drone strikes.
उन्होंने बोला कि अब हमें कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है खुदकश हमला और तैयार करने के लिए. मैंने खुद देखा है कि जिस गांव में ड्रोन होता है वहां पर
is exactly cashing in on putting drones in our skies.
Defense and aerospace firms which build drones have spent millions of dollars on lobbying over the past year.
It's estimated that in the next decade, drones will become an $80 billion business.
50 countries that are actively using drones. If we do it, why can't they?
Now, anybody who can develop drones and arm them, and mind you, there are quite a few out there who can, is going to be able to do it and pointed to us as the precedent and the protocol.
Other countries will recognize the utility of drones as a means to attack their supposed enemies.
Israel showed off its latest drone.
Japan is looking to buy some more Global Hawk drones.
Rustam is expected to be everything that the American Predator drone is, a bird of prey.
He gets armed spies in the sky.
The British government has spent some £2 billion on developing attack drones.
And China is launching some new lineup to its own fleet of drones.
What if China starts using drones against what it regards as terrorists? The decisions we've made in the last few years will come back to haunt us.
Wait till you see a drone over Times Square and you look up and see there comes a Hellfire missile.
En territorio americano.
The decisions we've made in the last few years will come back to haunt us.
Wait till you see a drone over Times Square and you look up and see there comes a Hellfire missile.
The drones are an excuse to avoid thinking seriously about what the United States should be doing to address al-Qaeda, or more broadly, the threat posed by violent Islamic radicalism.
Well, I've actually grown into spending much more time on community-based solutions to these problems because they're just more effective. We've seen a lot of programs that have succeeded in reducing violence and reducing militancy when the community gets involved.
And so what we need to do is to demilitarize U.S. policy. Now, in Washington, that is sort of an unthinkable prospect because we've got a national security elite that is so much devoted to the assumption that military power provides our strong suit. But the evidence says otherwise.
We had a phrase we used in the State Department. We called it drying up the swamp. You know, taking away the environment in which the terrorist flourishes. We're talking about helping people rather than killing people. I'm talking about a roof over their head. I'm talking about a lasting ceasefire. I'm talking about clean water to drink.
The notion that somehow al-Qaeda is the equivalent of Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan is foolish.
It's time to recognize that that's not working and to look towards something else, like policing and incorporating people into the political process, better programs at development that will lift people out of poverty and give them alternatives.
If we win the people of tribal areas to our side, we win the war, because they're strong enough to take care of the militants. The armed people in tribal area are almost 800,000 to 900,000. But these drones and Pakistani military operations are pushing these people over to the militant side.
It is clear that the present strategy to contain this violence, to contain these militants, these terrible men of violence, has not succeeded.
We need to stop letting our public servants be our public masters.
ډرون اټیک کله وشو په داسې د مو دوه ترې او دوه ترې زمون شهیدان شول بشه
خوږېږه ډېر سخت درد کوي کله کله به شیر باندې راشي دغه درد زه زغملی نه شم.
A lot of us came in as young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young people to becoming gloomy, negative individuals.
دغه کې دوه حمله وشوله او درې کسان شهیدان شول په شله میږه خپل کور ولا او دوه کسان میږه زخمی شولې.
I felt like I deserved, if I contributed to that many deaths, wouldn't it balance the world out if I was to be a casualty myself?
هسپتال ته یوړل په هسپتال کې مې علاج پر ډېر میاشتې تېرې کړلې او هغه نه چې کړل بیا پښې ته یوړل پښې نه پر نه واخیستو او نه په نه بعد بیا پښې ته جوړې کړلې.
I had this ideal about myself where, like, I wanted to do good, I wanted to save people's lives, I wanted to be a hero.
مو اول دا خیال و چې زه سکول وایم سکول ته تلله چې زه بیا ډاکټر جوړ شم یا بل څه بر نه جوړ شي او اوس څه نه شي کولی پښې نه کړ کړلې او بیا سترګه مې ختم شوله بس څه نه شي کولی په کور کې به ناست وم.
I had this oath that I swore that I felt I needed to follow because I gave my word, and the only thing that's worth anything in this world is your word.
فکر کوي چې دا ډرون حملو بند شي او بس میشته ژوندون ارسون شي ډرون حملو بند شي دا فکر کوي میشه.
I had to get away as quickly as possible.
زه امریکای خلک ته ویم اوباما ته ویم دا پیغام درکول غواړم.
موږ دا پیغام درکوي چې موږ د پاکستان عوام ته دا ډرون باند کو ورنه ویلې چې موږ ته ډېر نقصان دی تکلیف دی موږ سره ظلم شي یوتای شي کبر شي سره دا دای باند کو زر نه زر دای باند کو.
اوباما ته مو دا پیغام دی چې دا مهرباني ده د موږ سره وکړو چې موږ ته دا د مزه په سترګه نه ګوري د انسانیت په سترګه درته وکړي چې موږ انسانان یې خوله و پزه و یو شی دی جسم و یو شی دی بدن و یو شی دی.
تو جیسے غریبون دی آغاز دی ډېر په باندې امیر دا وایي چې دا ډرون د سیده باندې کو
aşık